All right, last running back we're going to get into, Miles Sanders. This is a guy that's kind of jerked us around in fantasy from time to time, from being absolutely terrible to then confirming he was going to be terrible again, to then not being terrible, to then getting traded to the Panthers. All right, so the headline options for Miles Sanders, these are fun because could Miles Sanders be better with the Panthers in 2023 fantasy? I would assume no, but I'm gonna hope that you can convince me of that if that's the angle you're going for. Which free agent running back is a top 12 in the Wolves projections? I don't know. Could it be Miles Sanders? You think Miles Sanders is going to be a top 12 guy?
That's how it came out, and this is coming from somebody. There's projections that pop. I'm not really a diehard Miles Sanders guy. I never loved him in fantasy. He's never been one to be on my teams. And yet I just looked at the work that he's expected to get this year, and he ended up coming out really strongly. 2019, they talked about it earlier when we were doing undervalued, overvalued on Travis Etienne. That was the year that we saw Miles Sanders have 50 catches. He hasn't topped 28 since then, but he showed he could. 50, 509 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns on 63 targets. And back then, Deuce Staley was his coach. That was the guy that recruited him to come over to Carolina. He is now the assistant head coach really over there. So this is a guy that went out, got the talent he's used the right way in the past, and now wants to use him again. And Sanders himself said, I'm looking forward to getting back in that 3-down type back roll, just flow with it and see what happens. So he's pumped. That's kind of what was promised to him. And you look at who they have behind him, Chuba Hubbard. There's no reason why he can't be a true 3-down back. Frank Reich has typically featured a healthy ground pry. He's been top 10 in rush attempts in 5 of his 7 years calling plays. He's never had a team below 443 team attempts as a rushing. So I kept that right in place. 443 attempts. I gave 58% of that to Miles Sanders because you only had Chuba Hubbard with no more Donta Foreman, a somewhat mobile quarterback, but not one that likes to run in Bryce Young, the rookie. They're not going to want this kid going all over the place. He's small. They don't want their franchise quarterback to be getting drilled. So I really think 60% of the work that equated to 257 carries for Miles Sanders, who I said I'm not a Miles Sanders guy, but he has always been very, very efficient in his work and yards after contact. And so you also got to follow that money. They gave him the most money of all the free agent running backs this year, including $13 million guaranteed. He's towards the top 10 of the league in money going to the running back position, which as we know right now is not one that typically gets paid. And so what if you get that combination of the boosted receiving role, about 40 to 50 catches. I have him going for 53 myself, 53 catches, 440 yards and a touchdown, but then he also maintains some solid work on the ground. I have him going for 257, 1,156, and 8 touchdowns on the ground. I do have his touchdowns going down. He had 11 last year. I think there's no way he sees as many red zone touches given the downgrade of team quality. 49 attempts last year in the red zone. That was the 4th most. So I definitely don't see him hitting 11 touchdowns again, but 7, 8, in addition to a spiked receiving role, all those things, despite not being a Miles Sanders guy, typically, it has him coming out in my top 12 running backs, shockingly.
I just think it's so interesting. I love when you do your projections because you put in what feels right to you. You use, obviously, a lot of it is gut, but the vast majority of it is data that you're then putting into the machine. And then what comes out, comes out. And then you have someone like a Miles Sanders, who I don't know what your instinct would have been going into the year where you would have put him, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been 12.
I think it was like 22, like running back 22.
I was going to say, if I were guessing for you, I'd have said 20.
Yeah.
So, I mean, comes out as 12 and you're like, I guess that's what the numbers say. I noticed that. I forget who we're talking about. At some point we were talking about receivers earlier in the year. And I was like, you got this guy ranked 5th, but he's got the second or the first best numbers of anybody. It just comes out weird sometimes. And then you change your rankings boards accordingly or you don't. But right. I love the process. We were talking about this guy.
And that's a really good point. Truth is, like, my rankings, I don't make them 100% in line with my projections.
No, you can't.
You got to have some of the gut, and the ranking does factor in some of my gut where I'm not a diehard Miles Sanders guy, but these projections are really popping. So he goes from running back 22 to now running back 16, maybe above even Aaron Jones. And in round 5, where I might have been targeting Aaron Jones and Dameon Pierce, maybe I now sneak Miles Sanders into there a bit more and start bumping up his shares because clearly there's something I like about at least his role. And I don't hate the player. It's not like I'm like, I can't touch Miles Sanders. He's awful. But that's why I like the process of ranking first, projecting, then going back to the rankings and kind of adjusting, but not set in stone. It's not Bible, you know what I mean? But yeah.
No, you can't just go by the projections, but you can't ignore them either. Like
No,
it's a thing, and so yeah,
exactly.
I agree with that process. You can't have the guy that you've got finishing 12th in projections as your 22 guy. You
No.
can't. You got to take that into consideration. Sometimes the numbers don't lie. Sometimes they do, I guess.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.